In this tutorial, we will use the Struts to Preparable interface that helps us to prepare input forms with data from lookup tables such as states or insurance coverage areas. In our example, we will add states to our register insurance agent form that we used in our previous Spring with Struts 2 lesson. For my YouTube students, there will be a link in the description to my Udemy course where you will be able to download the source code for all the examples. These are the steps we will follow. First, we will reuse our existing Struts 2 Spring example project. Then we will expand our in-memory service store class. We will add a method to populate the list of states. Then we will implement the preparable interface in our register action. Here we will get the list of states from our in-memory class. An important note here is that the implemented prepare method in our action will always be called by the Prepare Interceptor, and it will also be called on any validation fails. Then we will update our register input form with the Struts state dropdown tags so that we can populate the dropdown tags. And finally, we will run our register action to show how the state dropdown tags are used. So let's move over to Eclipse. First, we are going to copy our Struts 2 Spring Insurance Agent Register project. We are going to call it Struts 2 Preparable Insurance Agent Register. Now we make sure that the rest of the configurations are renamed. Okay, let's run it quickly to see if everything still works. So far it looks good. In this form, we are going to add a drop-down list of states. If we look at our agent in our insurance model package, we see that we have a state ID. Now we are going to add a list of states to our in-memory database. So currently we only have agent, get agent, save agent. So before we can implement a working get states method, we first have to create a state model object that contains a state ID field. So we will create our state class. Now we are going to add the members. I'm just going to paste them in. We're going to use Eclipse to generate the getters and setters for us. We're also going to generate a constructor. That looks good. We have our state object. Now we are going to implement the getStates method in our service class. So here we're going to add a getAllStates and a getState method. We will use Eclipse to generate those methods for us. And now we're going to need to add the array list of states, and we're going to need to populate some states here in our static initializer. And at that stage, we should be able to implement our getAllStates and getState method. First, let's add our array list. So we'll add an array of states. Then in our initializer, we are going to initialize our state array. In our example, these are the only US southern states that our insurance company operates in. At this stage, we should be able to get all the states or get a state from the state ID. This will give us an array list of the states. Here we use the new Java 8 stream to find the state that equals the input of the state ID. Also added the set state ID that we are going to get from our form. So at this stage, we've successfully changed our in-memory service database to get a list of state. And now, obviously, we need to update the action and the input form. Going to our register action, we are going to implement the Preparable interface. But before we do that, let's just add our list of states. We will generate a getter. And now we will add the Preparable interface implementation. Here we are going to get the list of states using the in-memory service store class. And this way we will get the list of states and have it available for our JSP, which we are going to look at next. Moving on to register.jsp, we see we already have the comments in here to add a drop down for the states. So I'll just paste it in. Now we can see we use the state ID name, the list of states from the agent bean, key of state ID, and the list value of state name. We get the text of agent bean.state from the properties. Let's have a look at the properties. There is agent.state. We also had to change state ID to a value of long in our agent object. Let's save it and let's see what happens when we run it now. Going to our register form, and here is our drop-down list of states populated with the 4 states from our static class. So we will select one, register, and we see we got back state ID of 3. So we will turn to menu page, select the form again, and we see we've got our selected form populated in the drop-down. Before we conclude the Preparable interface and Prepare Interceptor, let's just look at our Struts.xml and our insurance XML, and we see that we extend the Struts default interceptor. We do not specify a Prepare Interceptor here, and that is because if we look at the actual source code of the Struts default XML definition, we see that the Prepare Interceptor is included in the Struts default package. And the basic stack. And here we have some more examples if you want to dig deeper into how the Prepare Interceptor works. And that finally concludes our Preparable interface and Prepare Interceptor lecture.